Thanks, Kitty. So, the telephone rang, and it was my mother, which can mean one of two things. It's either something really banal, bordering on the obvious, or it's something huge. Two real-life examples. Hey, Dan, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing okay. What's up with you? Well, you know, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and I was thinking about having some people over around 3. Oh, you mean like you've been doing for the last 45 years? Yeah, I kind of figured that. I've made 6 pies already. Or, you know, it's sort of like, hey, you know, how are you doing, Dan? Oh, I'm doing okay. How about you? Oh, I'm doing pretty good. You know, just here in the hospital. Your dad's having that brain surgery that I've told you about. And this time was one of the latter. You know, she was sitting there with the police because her house had just been robbed. People had stalked their house for a while, and as soon as my dad left for his to go volunteer at the hospital, apparently they had come back in. He came in to all their jewelry having been stolen. You know, because with the high price of gold now, this some people do. They didn't even look at the electronics. Not that they would have. My dad still has Betamax, but you know, they just go in, cart all the jewelry out, and that's that. So, you know, of course, I'm a very practical person, and I just want to jump right in and do what I can do. So, you know, as I'm talking to her, I'm pulling up a list of all the pawn shops that are around, all the cash for gold places, and I'm asking her what got stolen and what she knows about it. And of course, she has no photographs of anything, so she's just describing these things. And you know, it's mostly just whatever, you know, she's, you know, been alive and bugging my dad long enough. She's got some pieces, but the one thing that she really focused on was this one gold ring that she was going to give me. That she said, you know, it was just a, you know, like a little gold band, and it was worn almost all the way through. I think it was that it was going to break, but this was your grandfather, your step grandfather's. And I really meant to give it to you, but, you know, oh, now I should have given it to you before, and now I don't have the opportunity. And as she said that, I realized I don't actually know, I think it was the first time she really ever talked about my step-grandfather. You know, like I know that my great-grandfather was a big drinker, used to bring his girlfriends home to the house because his wife was a fantastic cook. So he would bring his dates there before they went out drinking and things. That my grandmother was absolutely convinced he had another family because sometimes he wouldn't come home for a few weeks, and then he would stay home for a few weeks, and she just figured with the balance of time, he probably had at least one other family going. So I knew that my grandfather, my biological grandfather, was a silver plater and gold plater. And I knew this because, you know, over family dinners, we had all this, we had all kinds of silver and everything we had all kinds of real silverware you had to polish before the fancy dinners and everything like that. And you'd look at the end of it, and the initials would be like J.H., which is not anything to do with my family's initials. It was just some family that had come to have their silver plating done and then couldn't afford to pick it up. So my grandfather would bring it home. We had wine servers, which I don't think everybody has, but we had them because a church had them and couldn't pay for them. So we had these wine servers that said like the Baptist Temple of Philadelphia. But you know, it kept the wine cold. It was good to pass around at the dinners. And I realized that I really didn't know anything about them. So over the course of this, you know, of course their jewelry was never recovered, but my mom started finding these other things around the house. And she found a watch that belonged to him. And she told me about, you know, a few stories about where he got it, on this trip that he took my grandmother to in Paris. And she found his wallet and gave it to me, where he had kept for 30 years the wedding announcement from their, you know, the announcement in the Inquirer of his wedding to my grandmother. He had kept it there for 30 years. It was like $2 still. And the wedding announcement. And he had always had it in there. And I can't say that this is a process that's over yet. Compared to some of the more colorful figures in my family, this guy was not, he was stable, think my grandmother had had enough after, after actually losing her first husband because he was a silver plater, after having to take care of my great-grandfather as he continued to philander his way through his old age. He actually died on a train on his way to an assignation, just at some motel. He was like 80 years old, still messing around. So my step-grandfather kind of got lost in the shuffle. And in a weird way, it was actually losing this little gold ring that was the prompt. This is only about a month ago. It was the prompt for my mom to start telling me stories about this man who really spent more time in her life than her biological father. Now, her biological father actually had obviously has a big place in her heart and in her memory, but this was a way, through the loss of this one little gold ring, for her to unlock the stories of this other part of my family. So in a way, we lost that little piece of gold, but really gained a valuable connection to the past.
Woo!